So we are in a tier 0 format. However, let's actually talk about which decks still stand a chance to compete right now. If you enjoy content like this, of course, subscribe. Basically, the way I see it, there's 1 or 2 decks that fit in tier 0. The most important thing you need to realize about this format, your deck needs to be able to play 16 hand traps, at least main decked and post side even more, in order to make it so that the opposing Snake Eye and Fire King players have no board, nothing. And then you should be able to have a bunch of 1-card starters or so forth that make your own board. So you're basically going first when you went second. That is the only way you get to play the game. So any deck that can do something like that at least stands a shot. So let's get right into it. First of all, we have Chimera. Again, in my opinion, that goes into at least you got hand traps. There is a world where you make a Chimera deck with 1 billion hand traps that going second just tries to hand trap the fireboard into nothingness and then does its own thing. If you can do that, cool. Then you can actually sometimes win against the deck. And so, you know, you got that going for you. Centurion, again, at least you got hand traps. There is a world where you go, Veiler, Imperm, Ash, oh, you got nothing. And now I Calamity Lock. That is your win call. Roids? I mean, I like me some Roids. Tier 0, baby. Let's go. But no. Alright, Dinos go straight into sorry. As far as I'm aware, Dinos cannot fit 16 hand traps main deck with 1-card starters on a 40-card deck list. If you think it does, cool. Then we have Voiceless Voice. So the weird thing about Voiceless Voice is I think people have new toy syndrome. I think people are like hella excited to play this because they're new cards and they are gonna be very strong if fire gets destroyed. But the deck doesn't really fit all the required non-engine, and then its board is also pretty weak. I don't think it's that great. But if fire gets nuked, this is real. For now, though, I don't know. I feel like the only reason it gets results is because it's so played. I'll put it in your trying because it has representation, but I don't think it's actually trying. Rika, Aroma, and so forth. You can try to fit hand traps, but mostly all these plant piles really don't fit enough. I'm sorry, Jess. I'm sure you are the one who can fix that, but I'm gonna put it in sorry. Next, we have Unchained. So Unchained cannot fit the required amount of hand traps. However, fire cannot actually break this board going second either, and this deck does play through hand traps pretty okay. It is relatively inconsistent, but I did just see Cody Manabe win first place regionals with this deck. But then again, Cody is like an insane player, so I don't know where to put Unchained. It definitely doesn't have hand traps though, but I do want to put it at the bottom of your trying. I actually want to say that at least you got hand traps. There's a world where this even goes above your trying. I don't know. Pearly. So Pure Pearly can play hand traps, but can it deal with the follow-up? Maybe. I think Pure Pearly stands a chance. I think it's better than Chimera. Okay, then Phantom Knights. I'm gonna put it in sorry. I know it got top 32 at YCS Sydney. Congratulations to that player. I love Phantom Knights, but it generally cannot fit the required hand traps, and it cannot play through the hand traps from right now that well either. You know, if you Veiler or Imperm on the Cherubini after you already got rid of the Brave engine, which is 2 hand traps, which is what most people will be having, because right now everyone's playing them because of Snake Eye, then this deck just doesn't feel that good. If you notice that they started with enough extenders so that their Cherubini isn't that crucial, then you can wait until you hit Rusty. That's fine too, but in the end, it just doesn't feel that real. Next, we have Cash. I think Cash is actually real. So Cash is a deck that, first of all, doesn't care that much about hand traps. And by activating Shifter, they're already turning off Veiler, Droll, Ogre. So a bunch of hand traps are already dead as fuck just under Shifter. And then if you Mourner them, which is something people are playing to hit Diabellstar and so forth, that also does nothing often because they might go like Special Summon Unicorn, you Mourner them, then they go, haha, normal summon the hand trap, make Baron, activate Birth, bring back Unicorn, Unicorn effect, add Theos, get Fenrir, Fenrir, add follow-up, boom, they have their whole board and you hand looped yourself. As well as them going like activate Raid Salt, you Ash that, they Special Summon Unicorn, haha, get baited loser. Those kind of plays make it to where Cash plays through hand traps well, which is why during Cash format everyone was on breakers, but now that everyone's on hand traps because they have to be, Cash becomes a whole lot better. They can also Shifter, and often Snake Eye doesn't really put up a whole lot under Shifter. And most important is that almost every 2-card combo in Kashtira is OTK in 4 summons, meaning even when they still have Nib backing up their non-board because you hand trap them so hard, you can still just nuke them before Nib can hit the board, which is really, really crucial. course, since you always get into these hand trap wars, Fenrir is also a broken card, and they're essentially playing 7 Fenrir in a bunch of ways to Fenrir. So I think Cash is actually really solid right now for that reason, and I'm putting it in your trying. Now you might be wondering, why not in tier 1? Then, you know, there's nothing in tier 1. If you're not playing fire, you're not in the conversation of tier 1. It's that simple. Next we have Salamangreat. So Salamangreat can play hand traps, and it has a bunch of 1-card starters. It cannot play True Nibiru, some people think, but the Snake Eye engine actually makes that possible. Now, of course, the question is, if you're going to be playing a bunch of Snake Eye cards, why would you even play Salamangreat at all? But okay. Next we have Branded. So Branded, honestly, I know a bunch of people are putting it hella high right now. I don't agree. People are putting it like this, right? People would put it right here and go like, oh yeah, Brand actually has a good fire matchup. I ask you, why? Why does Branded have a good fire matchup? Like, the thing it can do is it will semi-break the board by drawing a bunch of breakers, and then it normally can't deal with the follow-up, but then it will just puppet lock them so the follow-up doesn't matter. Okay, that's cute. But you still had to draw all your good playable cards and then not get destroyed by their non-engine. Because Branded cannot play hand traps, or at least not enough hand traps that makes it worth it, so they cannot play hand traps. So their 1-card combo Snake Eye Ash always comes true. So they go summon Ash, boom, the full board hits the field. And now you need to compete with the full board and any non-engine they have on top. So if they drew like Snake Eye Ash plus 4 hand traps, there is no universe where Branded ever breaks that. There is no hand in Branded that breaks that, unless the Snake Eye player misplays. So Branded, in my opinion, just doesn't have a good fire matchup. And while we can look at these like DB Grinder videos where Nightfall is really crazy and good, and that's true, you know, pro Branded player and so forth, if we then look at results, Branded is a very played deck. We can look at YCS results, we can look at regionals, there's a bunch of Branded players, and they don't fucking convert. Because this deck cannot deal with hand traps. You can go like Fusion Deployment, put Cartesia on the board, activate Branded opening, special summon Aluber. You then go, oh, but I can dodge the Imperm with this Cartesia. Yeah, but often everyone has 2 hand traps because of how many like are being played. And this is assuming that you're opening all of these good starters. Don't forget, Branded is playing a bunch of bricks, like Retribution, like Saranir, like Lubellion, honestly, like Fallen of Albaz himself, like Despian Tragedy, like Adlib, like Puppet. There is so many bricks in this deck. So yeah, sure, you can show me like the craziest hand of Deployment, Opening, Branded Fusion, Albion, and so forth, but for every hand like that, there's 8 hands full of fucking bricks. So I think this deck is being overrated, even though I do think it's strong. I just don't think it's as strong as people are saying. I do think it's better than Voiceless though, because I don't think Voiceless actually is that real either. Next we have Volcanic. So Volcanic doesn't have hand traps. It's one of the weaker fire decks, but it's still a fire deck. I'm still gonna put it in Sorry though. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think because it can play fire cards that it's better than some of these other decks. But the question is, why the fuck would you play this if you have all the fire cards when you could be playing fire? Then you can say, oh, but Volcanic is a higher ceiling. Okay, but you could be playing more hand traps so you can actually go second, which this deck cannot without playing all these hand traps. So people play it at 60 to try and fit all the hand traps. But at that point, you're just seeing your good Snake Eye cards less often. And I'm just like, why are you playing bad Salamangreat? And then if you're playing Salamangreat, why are you playing bad Snake Eye? So for that reason, Volcanic goes in Sorry, even though I do think it's a really good deck. Next we have Snake Eye. Boom, tier 0. No one saw this coming. Ho ho ho. Yeah, this deck is crazy. I think if everyone actually knows how to play their deck through hand traps, then it's literally just compare hands. And Snake Eye is just the deck that does that the very best. So tier 0, bada bim, bada boom, it's Snake Eye. Hand trap wars galore. Enjoy your format. I don't know why you would. Next we have Runic. It goes into Sorry because Runic cannot play hand traps. So like any type of Runic deck just cannot actually compete with the fact that they will be making their full board backed up by non-engine, and then going second Runic into a field with 3 Mourner, 3 Imperm, 3 Veiler. Good luck. Now, of course, if you Hugin in draw phase, at least you're not getting Veilered, but there's still 6 of these fucks waiting for you to not get Fountain access. So that's just way too tough right now. Next, we have Sprite. So Sprite, I want to put in at least you got hand traps, because it's true, you can play a bunch of them. This deck can easily play like 20 cards of engine, 3 prosp, and then 17 hand traps. However, However, there is one major issue that I have with this deck. I actually tried it. You know, I was like, Sprite was really good, right? You can play a bunch of hand traps, why not? The big issue this deck has is that if you go first, you could navigate some of their hand traps, but then if they break the board, or even if they semi-break the board, you have zero follow-up. Like, you put everything into that board, and you cannot link into Sprite Elf to get back into the game. So the closest thing I actually got to having a functional Sprite deck was playing this at 60. Yeah, I know, very sad. So that I could play a way bigger Nimble package and multiple Sprint, so that at any point I can randomly redo Sprint after having already done it in my combo, and then actually at least still being able to play. But that just feels so bad. Like, the fact that you are that down bad for follow-up is just so shite. And then the bigger issue even, because again at 60 that problem was mostly solved with a bigger Nimble package, even though these cards are bricks. Biggest issue is really that when you hand trap your opponent to death, the Snake Eye opponent, and they're ending on just an Ash because you went like, Veiler, Imperm, I'm so good at the game, you do not OTK reliably. Like, there is no easy way to OTK when they have nothing, at least with one card. And again, you're also gonna get hand trapped on top of that. Like, all these little bodies are so tiny, and even Gamma Burst doesn't really help. They might end on like an SP at least. And even the Mosquito lines are very hard with all the hand traps. Again, like, you're gonna have 2 or 3 hand traps to knock their turn out. They might end on like 1 SP or an Ash or whatever. They'll still have 2 hand traps or so. You are not OTKing. And then because you're not OTKing, they get a turn, and their follow-up, at least, is still very strong. They will still just blow you out of the water. So Sprite, just like, at least you got hand traps, sure, but you really need some help to OTK somehow through these boards, even after you hand trap them to sleep. So yeah, I tried, but maybe it's actually worse than Salamangreat. Then we have Vanquish Soul. A Vanquish Soul is very inconsistent. It is a shifter deck, which is cute, but I just don't think this deck is that great. Can it fit the required hand traps? Not as cleanly as Cash and Sprite, at least. Orcust cannot fit the required hand traps. Orcust is more so like a board breaker deck, and so yeah, like, you're just, I mean, I'm gonna put some respect on the plans here, but Orcust, nah, it's a board breaker deck, and you just cannot board break these decks. They're backed up by non-engine at least. Again, like, you can think, oh, the board itself is quite okay, I just Dark Ruler no more them, but if you let them play, that means they now have 4 other cards in their hand. That's probably gonna be like Ash, Veiler, Mourner, and you're just not breaking it ever. Exosister. I actually considered Exosister. I was like, okay, so here we have a deck that can play Shifter, that has an in-engine Dweller, which is pretty good into the fire decks. It is usually seen as a board breaker deck, but again, you can't do that right now. You need to be a hand trap deck, so that's already kind of shite. It doesn't have enough room for non-engine, I feel. I considered it, but I haven't given it the proper try. So I'm gonna put it in Sorry, but if you are an Exo God, maybe you know something I don't. So like, I put this in Sorry because I know it doesn't have the hand traps required, and I haven't seen it trying. But I do think there's something there. I just haven't given it its fair shot, but I do have a little hope. Then we have Fire King, so I'm gonna put that in tier 0 as well. Basically, like, people will say, oh, you can never have 2 decks in tier 0. These are the same deck. Like, it's really just Snake Eye as an engine that is tier 0, and then whether you play it pure to end on synchro boards, or you play it with Fire King to end on like Fire King-esque boards, it's really the same thing. The value comes from all of the follow-up and the extra pushes in Bonfire, Snake Eye, Ash, Die, Bellstar. The fact that Promethean Princess is a custom card, the fact that Hita and Dark are so good, leading you to, and then the Zelant is OTK, you know, all of these plays are the same across this deck. They're just 2 flavors of the same tier 0. However, I do think we need to have a conversation about which is better. At the very start of the format, before actually Phantom Nightmare came out, I was testing in Japan with my friend Noman, and after one evening, I was like, yup, Snake Eye is better than Fire King. And the reason I said that was because Snake Eye could play a bunch of non-engine, and that evening it had already become super clear, like ridiculously clear, that this would be a hand trap war format. This was just going to be like, haha, you don't get to play, I do get to play, I auto win every fucking time. And Snake Eye is simply better at that than Fire King. Fire King plays a bunch of dog shit cards that do nothing until you're playing, and we're in a format where you're often not playing. So Snake Eye is like the obvious better deck in that regard. However, there is one thing Fire King does have, and that is Kirin. Being able to dodge these hand traps people are playing with that destruction quick effect is really good. So if everyone starts blinding into that, and you are basically forced to get lucky, because that is really what these mirrors are about. You know, I have my starters and extenders. You have your hand traps. Let's see who got the best ones. That is the mirror. Whoa. Fire King might start getting an edge. Again, even though Snake Eye can play more hand traps, so it technically should win out. If you need to get lucky anyway, and you basically have 3 cross-out designators in your deck extra in the form of Kirin, and again, you needed to get lucky anyway, I think Kirin might actually start pulling ahead, which is really weird because every single person I've spoken to the past months, I have been saying Snake Eye is the best deck, Fire King is bait. Fire King sucks dicks. Not actually, because it's still tier 0, but like, I was on the Snake Eye train from day 0 before most people. But now that everyone is going to be on the Snake Eye train, gradually, there might be an argument that Kirin as a hand trap dodge might become good. There's also the thing that people are starting to realize that if everyone's doing the same board on Snake Eye, you can Dark Ruler no more them. And then if you can Dark Ruler no more them and Puppet Lock them after, or Winda Lock, more on that later, there's an argument where this is becoming too obvious. Now the thing is, if everyone knows that this is too obvious, if everyone is starting to play Snake Eye in one way and then everyone is starting to Dark Ruler them in one way, they will swap off Summon Limit into Anti-Spell, at which point everyone needs to go back on hand traps. So this is going to be not only random as fuck when it comes to hand trap wars, it's also going to be random as fuck as to what way people are playing around what other people are playing around. Yeah, cool format. So yeah, but in the end, it's these 2 decks. If you want to do well, play one of these 2, and then you need to meta call, you know, how many Snake Eye do you think? How many Mourner Veiler are there going to be? How many Dark Ruler no more to choose between Anti-Spell and Summon Limit? Even though Summon Limit is like the good choice, if everyone's on Dark Ruler, you might want to consider Anti-Spell, which is... Alright, next we have Sword Soul. Once again, at least you got hand traps. This is a deck that can go second. It can hand trap you to sleep and then OTK. Mostly with 2 cards though instead of 1 card. So maybe it should be lower than this. Then again, this is worse. But it's still pretty solid. It's underrated, I feel. I'm gonna make a budget video and Sword Soul is gonna be on there. This deck can play the required non-engine, which is wild. And then we have Earthbound. I don't know enough about this deck. I'm gonna put you next to Exosister, but it kind of feels scope. Maybe one day it won't be, but for now it feels scope. Next we have Manadium. So Manadium technically cannot play the required amount of hand traps, but then again, it does have the fact that a bunch of people are starting to cut draw. It can play through the hand traps pretty well, so going second, it's pretty good. And if you kind of like swallow your pride and start cutting some of the ceiling increase cards to fit the hand traps, it gets close enough to where if it's your day, it feels pretty good. So I want to say this is like slightly under Chimera, because at least Chimera can actually fit the hand traps. Yeah, that feels good. Next we have Tearlaments. So that's my baby. I love Tearlaments, but it cannot play the required hand traps. It has Branded Syndrome. It has like the highest ceiling in the game, can make the craziest boards, blah blah blah, but you cannot play hand traps at all. You cannot fit non-engine in general. You have like 3 slots, maybe 6 if you're really pushing it, but then you get inconsistency issues. However, it has one piece of tech that Branded has access to and that other decks don't have access to. And that is the fact that you can break the board and then lock them out of the game. So where Branded, again, you break the board, they're gonna have a bunch of follow-up, but that's fine because you puppet lock them so they don't get to play the game anyway. Tearlaments can Winda lock them so they don't get to play the game anyway. So for that reason, there is a world where this is playable. However, I haven't tested that enough to actually say. I'm not trying too hard this format because we don't have YCSs, so I don't care. But this is something that's like testable. If you want to cope on tier, my brothers and sisters, I will cope with you. That is the way it might work. We might be able to do some Winda lock shenanigans. But I don't know. Their board is going to be backed up by non-engine. Can we deal with that non-engine? I don't know. Next, we have Flu. Yeah, I'm saying it. Flu is cracked. Flu can play Shifter. Flu can play Featherstorm. These cards by themselves are silly FTKs. But what's also important is that their biggest issue was always consistency. This deck has a really high ceiling in how it can like dodge a billion things and how it puts up really good boards and how it has infinite follow-up and how, again, it has these 6 bullshit auto-win cards. But its issue was always its outcomes were random because you had to get lucky with whether or not you opened starters at all. However, there's a new card in Phantom Nightmare. I forgot the name, but it's this quick play that basically dodges Veiler and Imperm, which is already something they're afraid of. And they had like 3 quick plays before that did that. Now they have 6, but that also ups the consistency. And so we've been seeing really good players from like Raiden Trade, also the current Master Duel World Champion Emre and so forth, topping a very big German regionals with Flu. Everyone laughs about Flu because it was always this inconsistent mess, but now with this quick play, it's no longer an inconsistent mess. So Flu is real. So I'm putting Flu right there also because like they don't care about a bunch of things that people are doing right now. Mourner, Ha! Nib? Okay. Shifter? Pff, alright. Puppet Lock? Ha! That's cute. There's so much stuff that they simply do not give a fuck about that this deck is real. It's not as real as tier 0 these decks. Obviously, these decks are crazy. But it's more real than people give it credit for. Next, we have Lab. Lab, people are even still playing Bestials. That's so wild. Can they play hand traps? Yeah. Can they play enough of them? I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe very bottom of at least you got hand traps. You know, if you do your best, you might fit them. All right. Next, we have Scareclaw. Okay, it's time for the hottest of takes. I think Scareclaw is as playable as you can be in a tier 0 format without being on this row. So, okay, hear me out. Hear me out. I know I'm gonna sound crazy. This deck is also gonna be in my budget decks video. Scareclaw can fit a billion hand traps, which again is what is required. You do it without the adventure. And I know adventure increases your ceiling, blah, blah, blah. You don't need ceiling. This deck needs to hand trap the living fuck out of Snake Eye and Fire King so that there's nothing. Yeah, nothing. There's nothing. Nothing's left because you hand trapped them so hard. And then every single Scareclaw card is a 1-card OTK. So then your opponent needs to just have not Nib and you're good. And going first, again, your board is going to be backed up by all this non-engine, but you have an in-engine card that says all these link monsters are dog shit. So Scareclaw's end board, while silly, weirdly is pretty good into the fire decks. And then again, once they can't break it because you had this stupid lingering floodgate trap, at that point you just win the game because you have 1-card OTKs. That's the only thing the deck does. So I think you can actually play Scareclaw without adventure right now. Hand trap everyone to sleep, OTK, and win that way. And then you just use also your trap going first. It seems like an okay strat. Again, we're in the realm where you need okay as your best benchmark, because if you're not playing these, you're not really playing Yu-Gi-Oh anyway. You know, so we're all semi-coping. Everyone here is coping. I'm down here as well. I sold my fire cards. I'm not playing $1,500 to play at locals. Okay, so I sold my fire cards. So if we're in cope land, I think Scareclaw is more real than most people think. I think this deck, again, we're in cope land, but in cope land, this is still pretty good. All right, next we have Dragon Link. So this deck plays true stuff pretty well. You know, true Veiler, Imperm, and so forth. Can it fit the hand traps? Maybe at higher card counts? I think at higher card counts, you just can. Okay, so we put it here next to Manadium, because under Droll, you're still kind of crying as well. Next, you have Infernoble. Infernoble cannot play the hand traps. It does get better with the fire cards, but kind of like Volcanic, at that point, why are you not just playing fire? But I do have a friend that recently topped the regional with this still, and he's very consistent with this deck. So if he's still consistent now, I mean, that means some. But I do think this is just like worse Manadium, because Manadium does similar bullshit boards, but at least you can play hand traps, whereas this can't really fit them that well. So yeah, this is it. This is, in my opinion, the format right now. You play fire, or you're not really playing. But if you're with me in Copeland, you still have some options. I do think Unchained is kind of out there. Again, if Cody Manabe hadn't won their regional with this, I wouldn't probably put it here, but that at least says something to me. But we could also just put it lower. So this is kind of like whatever. But the thing is, it doesn't have the hand trap. You know, you can try to fit it. Cody was playing a couple. I don't know, though. If I were going into an event right now and I couldn't play fire, I'd play one of these. One of these two. And nothing else. But at least these have hand traps. Hope you found this interesting. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Ciao.